Does VIVI really have Emu's will? If so, then how and why? Why does VIVI like this pose so much, and how will One Piece end? All of this and more coming right up, so let's get straight into it. You might have recently seen an ultra super mega series about this topic popping on YouTube, and if you haven't, then you know what to do. Make sure to click the link on the screen and go give it a watch. We're going to be touching on some similar topics here and definitively proving VIVI is a reincarnation of Emu's will, similar to Luffy with Joy Boy and Shirahoshi with Poseidon. You'll have enough evidence to convince anyone that this will be how the story ends, so drop a sub and we'll check out the spiciest connections first. After almost 1100 chapters, we still have yet to be given much information on the mysterious Emu. Probably the only real scene people think about is when Emu stands over the 3 cut-up posters while holding a picture of VIVI. Emu takes this picture to the throne and then provides the name of someone she wants eliminated to the Gorosei. Not long after this, Cobra is declared dead and newspapers claim Sabo is the culprit and VIVI is missing. This scene does demonstrate a significant connection between VIVI and Emu, hence why Oda showed us this strange sequence in the first place. Also, when you look at the 4 pictures involved, we see Blackbeard, Luffy, Shirahoshi and VIVI. We know Shirahoshi is Poseidon, we found out Luffy is Joy Boy in Wano, and we know Blackbeard has ties to Zebek, so surely this has to mean VIVI is connected to someone from the past too. Emu. But how do we know it's Emu that VIVI is connected to? Well, for starters, Emu is the one holding the picture and it's the only one undamaged. Additionally, Cobra dies soon after Emu requests someone's death, so it's more than likely the name Emu said was Cobra, which again ties back to VIVI as he's their dad. Emu could have done this to get Cobra out of the way after he began asking questions. We also see a connection with Rain. Ever notice how VIVI commanded the rain in Alabasta? VIVI has tons of ties to Rain, the spicy of which is probably these. Here we see what some claim is VIVI summoning the rain with her voice. We also have this really eerie panel where VIVI is fixated on the rain outside and even says to Igram she's watching the rain. Additionally, ever notice how it never rains on Marijua? Most of the community speculates that Emu has ties to water, the ocean or rain. I agree with this idea, and I believe she is responsible for flooding Wano, among other parts of the world. Personally, I think Emu did this after Joy Boy moved Pluton to Wano from Alabasta by using like a big version of the Rainmaker, or some ability to move the water from Alabasta to flood Wano, causing Alabasta to dry up. Interestingly, Rainbase was known as the City of Dreams, and Emu being connected to dreams is an idea that's been growing more and more in the community recently. Igram says to Luffy he dreamt VIVI had become the queen and saw her Jolly Roger with a crown as well. Both have had secret identities during the story. Emu is unknown to the world, and VIVI infiltrated Baroque works as Miss Wednesday. Oda also gave us a hint with VIVI's name as well. Wednesday comes from the phrase Woden's Day. Woden refers to Odin, and Odin is the king of the gods and Asgard, which is a fitting name for a parallel to Emu. Furthermore, they're both royalty and members of the original 20 kingdoms, something we know celestial dragons care about. This connection is interesting because it could be that Eevee is required by Emu because of her lineage factor also. We know the Nefertari lineage is royalty and Emu could potentially be Nefertari herself, so VIVI could be a fitting successor in that sense too. The lineage factor could include the strange sort of abilities we see from both of them and might be the reason potentially why Emu kidnapped her in the first place. It gets even spicier though. VIVI is shown to have a strong sense of order and balance. Her will is noted to be strong, and we explicitly see VIVI's eyes when she apparently uses her ability, similar to what we saw with Emu in Lalesia. Then there's the age-old debate that Emu is female, and for me, after seeing Lalesia crossed off the map, there's no doubt that this is a female hand, belonging to either Emu or maybe even VIVI, considering Emu usually has a silhouetted or gloved hand, and it's not going to be a random character. So anyway, speaking of Lalesia, both characters have had to deal with rebellions during the story. For example, Emu is currently dealing with populations revolting all over the world. In VIVI's arc, we saw a war between her royals and a rebellion, so that's another connection there. But why would VIVI need to succeed Emu in the first place? I theorize Emu performed the perennial youth surgery on herself. The surgery is said to cause the operator to die. This can mean if you perform the surgery on yourself, then rather than sacrificing one's physical life, you sacrifice your will or soul, which is the life force of the One Piece world. Sacrificing your own will may prevent it from moving on naturally, like we hear about in Skypiea, which is where VIVI comes in. In the One Piece world, when someone's will dies, it is reincarnated into the world. similar to what we see with Joy Boy and Luffy. I believe Imu's will has been reincarnated in VIVI because of all the connections between the two, which we will continue looking at in a minute. Imu would need to retrieve her will in order to be whole again, which is foreshadowed by the butterflies in the Garden of Marijois, as butterflies represent transformation, you know, caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly. We can be sure Imu knows about such technology because we see her keeping the Straw Hat cold in the Marijois vault artificially. Living a long life and preserving will are prominent themes in One Piece, and we see old Kureha discuss it in drum, with the sakura petals that were indicating inherited will. Then what do we have here? Here, we see VIVI with sakura petals blowing past her, again indicating inherited will. Is Karu cutting out a picture of Luffy in the background there? And what balcony is this? Because there should be no cherry blossoms in Alabasta. This definitely creeps me out and could be suggesting VIVI and Imu are connected directly here, considering Imu has a cutout of Luffy's picture as well. Anyway, while we're on the subject of covers, what about this cover? Or this one, or this picture, or this one? VIVI seems to like balance just as much as Imu, right? We also see the Gorosei mention balance twice. It's crazy how many examples of this there are in the story, and it certainly counts as another parallel to Imu. In the cover for 423, we see VIVI sat on land with her feet in water. Otters are surrounding her, and otters live on both land and sea, similar to the seagulls that we see featuring there too. Also, we have watermelons, a fruit that grows on land and is known for being watery. It's even in the name. This cover is pretty explicit. It shows a balance between the land and the sea, with VIVI being a part of that balance, half and half. This cover does the same in a more subtle way, while also showing the future of Alabasta, I think. We have Luffy in the background enjoying the rain, holding the water containers from Alabasta, implying Alabasta is where this takes place. Interestingly, we see the rain and huge saplings growing from the ground, suggesting whatever is growing here will be giant. Giant trees, perhaps, as we've seen. Importantly, we see a frog, similar to this cover. Why is this important? Well, frogs are amphibians, again suggesting a balance of land and water. Here we see VIVI tending to the frog. You could argue she's healing the relationship between the land and the sea here. Also, I wonder if this frog foreshadows a prince, like from the fairy tales and stuff, and if so, who that would be. In chapter 823, Cobra makes it clear that he wants VIVI to marry, stating he has a stack of pictures of potential suitors. VIVI doesn't seem to care, and the conversation only lasts a single page. Oda seldom does things for no reason, it seems, so Cobra probably had a very good reason for wanting VIVI to marry. Maybe he had some idea that Imu was interested in her in some way. This cover page says bride in training. When you add that to the fact that we've seen VIVI being fitted for a wedding dress twice, we can see marriage is being suggested. Could it be Imu that wants to marry VIVI? Or Joy Boy perhaps? Considering recent imagery such as the new Vivre card design, I'm starting to believe VIVI and Luffy are tied to marriage in some sense, more so than Imu, most likely as a projection of Joy Boy and Imu's relationship years and years ago. There's plenty of examples of Luffy and VIVI paralleling Joy Boy and Imu, but for this video I'm just going to point out one I find really understated, one that most probably have forgotten about. I've speculated for a while that Joy Boy ties to whales and royalty, potentially of the ancient kingdom. Earlier in the story we saw VIVI enter a whale with a companion who was dressed as royalty. This is a bizarre scene and no doubt will be revealed to be a parallel to Joy Boy and Imu. Anywho, back to the covers. This one gives me an ominous feeling as well. VIVI is holding a filleting knife over a fish, which is of course a sea animal. It just happens to be kind of whale-shaped too. Her tongue is out, which we see with Luffy often when he's in his element, but we've also recently seen it with Stussy as she portrays CP0. Also, she stood next to Igaram's wife. Igaram being the character that dreamt she'd be the queen of pirates. Look at her apron, there you go. The symbol underneath is made of 3 elements, a heart, a cross, and the marine symbol. The heart implies a romantic or loving relationship, the cross I believe is Joy Boy's symbol, and the marine symbol is the Imu connection to the world government and navy. The marine symbol could actually be Imu's symbol originally, but I guess we'll have to find that out. Anyway, this suggests more freaky ties between VIVI and Imu, particularly with the filleting blade over the whale-shaped fish. Oh, this next cover is even weirder. We see an imitation of VIVI with a pretty evil expression and blank eyes in a wedding dress being carved out of wood. Wood in the One Piece world can store will or souls, so this cover depicts a copy of VIVI tying to soul and marriage because of the wedding dress. When you combine this with the fact that the eyes are considered the window of the soul, yet in this cover they are blank, and also the expression of the wooden's VIVI's face is kind of evil, I don't think it's a reach to say it's another abstract cover depicting VIVI and Imu's relationship in part. We got another cover here. We see Alabasta, but with a Japanese building in the background, which probably is a metaphor for Wano. What I want to focus on, however, are are the red flowers. Where have we seen flowers? There you go, Emu's garden. What else do we see there? Tulips, but I'll touch on that in a minute. So maybe that explains who this sea serpent trying to woo Vivi with a flower is supposed to be. It does make sense, seeing as serpents represent rebirth because they shed their skin. We see a lot of princesses in the story with flowers in their hair. Interestingly, however, with Vivi, she only wears the flower in her hair when she's dressed regally, never when she dresses down. The flower is a red rose, and as we know, that sort of associates with romance or love. And this is when we go back to the tulips, because we also see Emu growing tulips, and tulip, the meaning of tulips is also deep love. So it's an interesting connection between the two there. This all could tie back into the relationship between Emu and Joy Boy, or Vivi and Luffy, later on. And yeah, I guess we'll see more of that. Now, I want to show you one last cover. This doesn't actually add to the theory, but it's a cover that hit me pretty hard with emotion when I realized what was actually happening. And so I thought I'd share it with you guys. Here we have the Princess Vivi of Alabasta in a black dress with two frogs singing. Again, the frogs are amphibious, indicating the relationship between land and sea. And there are two, one either side of Vivi, showing us the relationship is balanced now. This is also personified by the plants we see, like water lilies, because it's a plant that grows above the water but lives on the water. A lily also represents death, and here we see Alabasta has had rain and it's not a desert anymore. Vivi is playing music, which is a way of communicating with the soul in One Piece. The instrument she's playing is a harp, which is symbolic for inner soothing or inner peace. The ruins in the background show the past is behind her. What's happening here is Vivi is soothing herself over the death of her father. Now the dawn has come and she has time to reflect. Tragic, poetic, and beautiful work from Oda. Overall, these covers suggest Vivi is to bring balance to the world against Emu, who is trying to retrieve Vivi's will. Karu also appears a little sus in these too, so maybe he plays a part in this somehow. There are a couple more other covers we could look at as well, but that's a little more meta. They tell more like narrative details. In this video, I was sort of more so looking at just this strong, creepy connection between Emu and Vivi, and just how many similarities they have. So in conclusion, I think the 20 kingdoms were formed by Emu and took down the ancient kingdom. This is when Emu discovered ties to Nika and advanced technology, such as inherited will and lineage factor. Emu then used the Opiopi or some other means, such as the Eve tree, to extend her own life at the cost of her soul. Next, she removed any traces of the events of that time she could find, in order to prevent the technology from being discovered by others. This period is known as the Void Century, in which Emu puts Joy Boy's hat in the freezer in order to prevent his will from reincarnating by keeping it frozen. Centuries later, Emu discovers the reincarnations of Zebek or the Goru in Blackbeard, Emu in Vivi, Joy Boy in Luffy, and Poseidon in Shirahoshi, hence the panel. Emu then plans to destroy Joy Boy, Zebek, and Poseidon once and for all and inherit Vivi's will, reuniting her body back with her soul, perhaps using another surgery. This is why Oda showed us Joy Boy kind of possessing Luffy, and Luffy's heart beating in the same rhythm as Joy Boy's beat, because Luffy too is a reincarnation, physically, mentally, and in terms of will, just as Vivi is Emu. Seeing as Luffy is a reincarnated Joy Boy, he'll attempt to liberate Vivi most likely, noticing Vivi is not acting within her character. This may be a repeat of events that happened roughly 800 or 900 years ago, however with a different outcome this time, I'm hoping. Luffy will attempt to save Vivi and in the process bring down the Red Line along with Marie Joie and Fishman Island. Before this, the Fishmen will have been evacuated by the Sea Kings on the Noah under the influence of Shirahoshi. Luffy will succeed in bringing an end to the world government as we know it, but it will be Vivi that will be the one to bring about balance. The global political system will be world democracy and a new reverie will reinstate order, creating a new and less chaotic system where people can finally be free. This is the birth of the new era and the dawn of the new world. Okay, so that's everything VIVI Emu in a nutshell, pretty much. I've no doubt missed some stuff, but I'm sure you'll let me know down in the comments. Big thanks as always for watching, and if you did make it this far, you've just won a free Tontata. Please like and sub, tell your mum to leave a comment, and I'll see you soon to discuss more about the 3 reincarnations and how that all ties together. Anyway, peace.